Good morning, everybody. What a delight it is to be on this gorgeous island that's just 6 times larger than my island of Mallorca in Spain, where I live. So I always try to orient with the place I'm coming to. So, of course, I cribbed these pictures from the website for the conference. And this one I took from my hotel window yesterday. So thank you all for bearing with me. I'm going to give you a big picture view of where ethical fashion fits into the whole of business and nature as well. So I'll start because I'm a scientist. My PhD is in biology, and the ancient Greeks called science philosophias, meaning the lover of wisdom, the search for guidance in human affairs by studying nature. And that was exactly my purpose in studying science. I wanted to see, who are we humans, where do we come from, and where are we headed? So I became a deep pastist, an evolution biologist, in order to be a futurist, because you need to know where you've come from to have some idea where you might be able to go in the future. And I travel the world showing how biology, learning from nature, can guide us to that better future. Now, every human culture has had a cosmology, a creation story to guide its people's lives. And over time, the major world religions came to give most human beings their creation stories, with the Abrahamic religions and the Eastern religions kind of having a difference in the way they see the world, and now the two are getting all mixed up with each other, which I think is a good thing for our species. In the past few centuries of Western culture, from the time of the Enlightenment to the industrial entrepreneurs beginning the economy that we know today, and through them the formation of secular states, the cultural authority for telling the creation story shifted officially to science. And that's what now gives us the cosmology in the most official sense in secular societies. And that scientific worldview, which began with founding fathers such as Newton and Descartes, there weren't any founding mothers, a mechanical universe invented by God in which humans were complex robots, and God put a piece of God mind into the men so that they too can invent machinery. It was all very logical and complete. But to many of us that now seems downright medieval. Yet the story hasn't changed very much, especially in biology. This kind of celebration is what we do on my island. Quite often we love with fireworks. Now, Western science teaches that nature is accidental, non-living, meaningless, and through the two major sciences of physics and biology, it tells us that we're living in a material universe, I should say, because since quantum theory, the whole universe isn't quite as mechanical as it was, and it's running down by entropy. And biology, through Darwin, told us that we're in an endless struggle in the midst of scarcity, and that life fights this uphill battle playing king of the hill as the whole universe is running down. And these two major theories were decided in just those 20 years between 1850 and 1870 by Clausius in physics and Darwin in biology. And I wager that that is the most dreary, depressing creation story in the history of humanity. Now, we'll get better. Things will lighten up. Don't worry. Darwin was running around the world exploring all these marvels of nature and searching for an evolution theory. Where he found it was in the Darwin's family friend Thomas Malthus. Now, Malthus was chief economist for the first multinational in the world. Anyone know what it was? The East India Company. There were Dutch, French, Portuguese, Swedish branches of the East India Company. And Malthus, as chief economist, was sent around the world to look at the resources of the world, and came back saying, as you probably learned in school, that human populations would always outstrip their food supplies. And that's where we got the struggle in scarcity idea. And if you read original Darwin in The Origin of Species, he actually says, this is the doctrine of Malthus applied with manifold force to the whole animal and vegetable kingdom. So we have to ask, is it appropriate to take this socio-political theory and whack it onto all of nature? However, Darwin's evolution theory was not the only one taught. While Darwin was teaching the kind of competition among humans that was very, very compatible with capitalism, in the Soviet Union they were teaching Kropotkin's theory of mutual aid, because the communists, politicizing science just as the West was, found it in their interest to have their people learn the cooperative aspects of nature. Now, I'm going to show you how nature integrates both of them. You see, neither of them were wrong, but neither of them was all right either. If you put the two together, you begin to see what's really going on in nature. In my view, I see a cycle that moves from a basic unity that individuates, such as the early Earth's crust packaging itself as individual bacteria. And when you have individuals, you get tension and conflict. There's your Darwinian evolution. But during those tension and conflicts with species bumping each other off, sometimes they began to negotiate with each other, and if they could resolve some of those tensions and conflicts and set up cooperative schemes, they could build a new unity at a larger size level. So this cycle of moving from competition to cooperation is a kind of maturation curve that you can see, for instance, in individual humans, where we expect adolescents to be creative and feisty and competitive, and eventually to settle down into cooperative citizens. Even the ancient bacteria did it. And I shouldn't say even, because they were the real pioneers of this cycle. They're more like humans than anything that's come in between in evolution, because they caused worldwide crises of hunger and then solved it, and then caused a crisis worldwide of pollution and solved that. With innovative technologies such as harnessing solar energy to make food to solve the hunger crisis, building nuclear piles to keep warm, inventing electric motors that are 99% efficient, whereas ours are far less efficient so far, and creating the first World Wide Web by figuring out how to trade DNA. To this day, any bacterium on the planet can trade DNA with any other. And of course, there are more bacteria than anything else, and they had this planet to themselves for 2 billion years, fully half of all evolution. They're very important little creatures, and you are filled with them in your cells, in your guts, on your skin, everywhere. In fact, we may be big taxis they invented to get around in safely, as Lewis Thomas, former head of Yale University's medical school, used to quip. Now, when they came around that maturation curve, they formed giant communities with a division of labor, different lifestyles. Each gave up some of its DNA to the central library we call the nucleus. And that big cell on the right is thousands of times bigger than the bacterial cell in the upper left. It's a huge community, and that kind of cell never had to be reinvented. It's the kind you and I are made of, as are the trees out there and all the insects and everything else on the planet. So those cells then went on after another billion years in which they went through the maturation cycle to form the multi-celled creatures, including ourselves. Now, ecologists talk about different kinds of ecosystems. A type 1 ecosystem is populated by species that act like the juveniles. They take all the resources they can get, all the territory they can get, they multiply as fast as possible, and are highly competitive. In a type 3 ecosystem, which they call climax as opposed to pioneer, which suggests a sequence, but they don't recognize a sequence. They just say different kind of species which share territory, share resources, help ensure the life of other species, and are far more cooperative. Now, the reason they can't see this learning curve that's built into what they know is because Western science doesn't grant nature any intelligence, so it can't learn. Bit of a problem. Young species, now to sum up, are creative and competitive, while mature species have learned cooperation. And if you keep one thing from my talk, remember this: it is cheaper to feed your enemies than to kill them. Get that? Less energy is required to feed your enemies than to kill them. And if you do so, you don't have enemies anymore, and you can get on with doing far more wonderful creative things on this planet. Now imagine if we were using capitalist economics as currently practiced in the world in your body's economy. Okay, that means the northern industrial organs north of the diaphragm here, the heart-lung system, is now got ownership over the mines in the bones where the raw material blood cells form, can exploit that bone marrow, bring those raw material blood cells up to the northern industrial organs, where the blood is purified. This actually happens, and the oxygen is added to make the final blood in your body. And then the heart distribution center will announce what the body price for blood is and say who will buy. And you find that some organs can't afford the blood. So you bottle it till someone can afford it, or what? This economic system will not work in a healthy living system. So you must ask whether our bodies could stay healthy that way, and whether our world could stay healthy that way. Because while we each are a living system, so are our families, our communities, and our whole world. And the same principles must be obeyed at all size levels of living systems. So, in your body, you have a holarchy of molecules embedded in cells, embedded in organs, embedded in organ systems in your whole body. The self-interest, not selfishness, but meeting your needs at every level leads to negotiation among all the levels to the compromises required to maintain a healthy economy, and these negotiations thus drive an intelligent, dynamic harmony, a win-win economy rather than a win-lose economy. So look at the whole world and think globalization. Note the ethics in the negotiations if every level of the system is healthy. You cannot have a healthy global economy at the expense of local economies. Your local Sri Lankan economies and the total island altogether must be healthy economies by themselves in order to work within the larger system. If any level is missing something, is not healthy, the whole of the system will be unhealthy, just as it would be in your body. So notice that capitalism tends to sacrifice community to individual interest, while communism tended to sacrifice individual interest to community, and that's why it fell apart first. But neither is a sustainable system. It only works when we have healthy living economies that ensure self